Good evening. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Whether you're live or watching this recording, we are very happy that you're joining us. My name is Dr. Assael Romanelli.
I'm Galit Romanelli.
And I'm a couples therapist and a social worker.
And I'm a life coach and a PhD student.
And we together run Own Your Shit Limited. And we do couples therapy together. And since the war began, we opened a relational war room where we help couples not only survive, but thrive these hard times. And as part of our relational war room, we have a relational aid series. And today it is my honor. I'm very excited to host Dr. Shari Geller. And I want to introduce her, and then I want to say a couple of personal words because I have been following this woman for years. I know it sounds freaky, not in a weird way, not in a weird way. So Dr. Shari Geller is an author, clinical psychologist, and a certified mindful self-compassion teacher. She's co-authored the books Therapeutic Presence, A Mindful Approach to Effective Therapeutic Relationships, and a practical guide for cultivating therapeutic presence, which is an excellent book. She offers training modules in therapeutic presence internationally as part of her vision of having presence be a foundational training across psychotherapy approaches. And about a decade ago, as I was working on my PhD on improv and therapy, I was looking for a variable. How can I measure how improv helps clients? And I thought therapists. So I was training therapists, and then I don't know how, luck, I stumbled across what Shari Geller developed, which is therapeutic presence, which she'll talk about in a second. She actually developed a questionnaire for it, and she was I emailed her out of the blue asking for questionnaires and articles, and she has basically not only given me inspiration, she gave me the language, and then she also judged my doctorate. And it is my honor, and thank you so much, Shari. I really, really appreciate you coming in and taking time being with us.
Well, it's an absolute honor. I mean, when you reached out, and I just follow very closely, have dear friends in Israel and family, and just my heart goes every day to what's going on. So we reached out to make that request. It was an honor to be able to be here in this way. So thank you both for inviting me.
Thank you. And, this morning, since the war began, I wake up with these panic attacks where my mind is racing and I'm trying to feel my body and I'm feeling nothing. And I was like, thank God I'm meeting Shari tonight. Perfect timing to talk about presence and self-compassion. So, Shari, take it away. Give us, just do whatever you need to do.
Work your magic.
Work your magic, Shari.
I don't know if it's magic, but it definitely is, again, a presence to bring here. It's such an honor to be here. I mean, you being dissociated, waking up with panic attacks, my guess is you're not alone with that. This is incredible trauma that everyone in Israel and beyond is going through, not just what happened on October 7th, but I mean, the accumulation now when it's been months and thank God these two hostages yesterday were released, but were found rather, but it's like every day is another level of trauma. And when I consider and reflect on couples and what couples may be going through, I can only begin to try and get a sense, like things like obviously the incredible loss and grief, like living under threat all the time, right? In some way or another. Many people I know are living out of their home. People in the south and north have been living out of their home for months, where their kibbutz or otherwise is destroyed, or it's unsafe to be where they are. And whether it's living in hotels and the financial struggle of that, or living in people's homes and not having space for themselves as a couple through all of this, like the lack of intimacy, emotional intimacy, and physical, sexual intimacy when you're living under that kind of trauma. I imagine that must be either, that numbness and disconnection from yourself, which means numbness or disconnection from your loved one. I know that. So
yeah, sure. As you're telling this, I was like, I didn't realize all the levels of, like, only when you said it now, I was like, oh my God.
It's a lot. There's many layers, and probably it's all kind of buried under, and I was even reflecting on, couples who one partner is going off to war and then coming home when they can on a weekend or a leave. And they're in this, as you said before, sympathetic nervous system. And they're also with their buddies talking being in more of a gruff way and not showering and all the kind of things that are going on, and not responsible for children if there are children, and then coming home to a household that's running without them and figuring out where they fit in. There's just so many different levels that I can imagine. And I was actually going to ask you both and anyone who wants to share that's in the meeting, just what are some of the other kind of traumas that couples are going through or challenges going through in the middle of the war? And for those of you who don't want to speak out loud, feel free to put it in the chat, or maybe you both can share a little bit on parts that I'm not really touching on.
I'll share for men who weren't in the army. I mean, I was in for like a day or two, but like there's a lot of shame that you're not a man, you're not protecting, you're not serving. And if you're like me, you're not this primary breadwinner anymore. You lost your job or no income. So there's a lot of guilt and shame for men not being macho man. That's one layer.
And how do you think that affects you as a couple? I want to check in with you, Galit, but I'm wondering how, and you might be able to answer that, Galit. How do you think that's affecting you as a couple?
Well, I mean, I think there was a lot of kind of looking inward and turning inward, and a lot of kind of surfacing, I guess, kind of like how am I needed, and kind of also looking to me, am I needed, and if I am needed, then what does that look like?
Love me? Am I worth something? Then now that I'm not providing,
right.
I'm not a hero. What's my worth?
Right. So a lot of questions of kind of like worth in relation to, like production. Like if I'm not producing anything, then am I worthy?
Right.
So and how relevant am I? And, but I will say that actually tonight at dinner, our youngest turned to me at some point and said, Daddy's doing a lot. Like Daddy's been doing a lot at home. And it's true, you have been. Like you have been much more present with the family and at home.
Yeah.
I think it's a time for us to be present with each other. I think only recently we've kind of like found each other again.
Through this time.
I think like the partnership took over, right? Friendship and sex went out the door because it was going to talk. There's so much sexual violence in the air as well. So the partners took over, just functioning, just running the business.
Yeah, running the business and running the home business.
Right. Home.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And as you're saying, kind of partnership and relationship and sex goes out the door. Yeah, there's so much. I mean, the sexual trauma from October 7th and beyond, how that affects individually and relationally, and also like, I imagine there may not be true for you both because you work so closely together, but there may be couples who share very different politics, very different perspectives.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
That is very polarizing and very difficult. How do you sustain a sense of connection while having different views, right? Or even trauma. I mean, one person may be experiencing the traumatic stress and the trauma of what's going on in a different way, maybe in a deeper way. Maybe it's triggering other stuff more than the other partner.
Yeah.
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 And that may be hard to talk about together too, if your partner doesn't, like, why are you experiencing it this way? It's fine, not fine, but we're dealing with it, and that can bring kind of more.
Like for instance, for me, I can't look at any news. I can't watch anything, and Galit needs to get that information. So obviously, there's a gap in attention as well.
Yeah. Like I faith to kind of like air it out and talk about what I've heard and what I know and what's news and what's and Assael.
I can't.
And he wakes up at 6 o'clock in the morning with panic attacks, whereas I know I'm a really good sleeper, but.
Yes.
That's how I process, right? Like I'll watch it and then I'll talk about it and find more outlets to talk and talk. So,
and if it feels not able to talk about it because he needs to kind of shut off, how does that affect you as a couple? Like these are some of the many different layers that are even more subtle than just there's a big war happening, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need love and connection more than ever when being in the middle of trauma and stress and conflict and war, right? I am particularly in these times, like we can feel overwhelmed and shut down, and at the same time really need our partner, and those can be very hard. How do you reach out when you're in this disconnected state? How do you reach out to your partner when they're gone, or when you're, overwhelmed in some way?
But it really resonated what you said about the numbness, because I think that's part of the challenge, right? How do I connect when I'm so numb within myself? And I think for the first couple of months, I just felt, I just felt completely numb. I felt the most despair I've ever felt in my entire life. It's funny because I'm not a big planner, but I didn't see kind of where's our future going? Do we even have a future? What does that look like? And so there was just that void, that numbness that you kind of mentioned. I think until you kind of really used that word, I didn't realize, that was such a big wedge also, because when I'm numb, how do I even connect? How do I even attempt?
You're not connected in the moment, said. Yeah. So how could you then connect to your partner?
Yeah. And I felt like I lost joy, which is a huge part of my identity and who I am. And so it was just, there was a lot of kind of collapsing into, each one of us collapsed into themselves. Yeah. And I think kind of slowly that we've kind of.
Well, even that's something, right? Because as you unnumb to all of the feelings and the trauma and the and experience that's in there that's been numb. So it's not like you unnumb and, oh my, we're connected and we're in a great place.
Right.
You unnumb to all of that, and then to be able to kind of be with it and work with it. And something you said, Galit, like, didn't matter about being a planner or not. There's this loss of future. It's not just the loss of people and places. Like, what's happening in the future? I know some people feel, is Israel going to be Israel? There's so many different levels of this loss and grief. Some has happened, some is anticipated, and how do we carry all that, open up to it with our partner in a way that keeps us connected while we're in the middle of the war, the conflict still happening. It's a tremendous feat. So am I going to be here fixing it all for you? I wish I could. Can we talk about ways, to work with presence and self-compassion to be able to do that? And that's what I'd like to do, is to both talk a little bit about that, but also to do some experiential practices that, you both are incredibly generous at being the I don't want to call it guinea pigs, to be the that are willing to experience some of this, to model and demonstrate how others might as well.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that. And anyone talk about kind of presence, right? As you know very well, Assael, and some of my work is training therapists in therapeutic presence, and an added dimension is working with self-compassion, with the barriers to that, right? Because there are so many things that keep us from being connected to ourselves and others, especially in the face of trauma. So, one of the things when I talk about presence and what it is, it's not just in a therapeutic context, but it's in a person-to-person context, right? There's these qualities from our research that we've discovered of being very grounded within yourself and very centered, while being very immersed in the experience with the other person, really attuned to what their experience is, as well as my own, while holding a larger sense of expansion and spaciousness. Like, it's hard to hold the larger picture when you're in the middle of all of this, but it is a quality we want to cultivate, and all within the domain of compassion, that we're being in connection in service of relationship, in service of healing. So part of being in presence in relationship, involves both attuning to others, attuning to ourselves and the relationship between. And importantly, which we'll talk about a lot, is working with the barriers to that, like what gets in our way of that. And, one of the, just to speak for a moment of some of the work that's influenced me a lot, and is Stephen Porges, who does some work on polyvagal theory. it's really helped me to understand. I'm not going to do a lesson on it right now, but what I will say that's really important in it is that our nervous systems are responding to each other all the time. You know, we're both bidirectionally impacted in our own body. If we're numbed out, our body's shut down, or we're overwhelmed, our body's in panic, like our visceral organs and our mind are always in constant communication. But so are relationally, you know, our nervous systems are in relationship with each other, right? So it's like our partner's feeling anxious and overwhelmed. We either feel that or shut down if we don't know how to just be with it while grounding within ourselves in some way.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of nervous system sensitivity is so strong, and it can come out in partner fights. Like, you know, how you doing today? I'm fine. Well, you don't sound fine. You're not fine. What's going on? I'm fine. I've been with the kids. I've been whatever. Well, no, now you sound angry at me. I mean, it can go off into so many different kind of levels, right? And I think part of the beauty of being bidirectionally connected is we can be co-regulators for each other.
Yes.
But part of the challenge of it is what I was saying, that our nervous systems, what's happening for us is impacting our partner. And then we're in this cycle, this interactional cycle in our relationships. You know, like if one person is closed and shut down, the other partner might get more pursuing, like, I need you. Where are you? Well, can we talk about this? And then the more you feel demanded upon, the first partner feels more closed. And the more closed you are, that person gets more demanding. And it becomes this cycle of, for one example, of this kind of pursue, withdraw cycle that just ends up splitting, you know, more of the couple. So it's like one of the things that I think can be really helpful is to reflect on, as individuals in a couple, what's your style more when you get into conflict? Do you get into more attack? Do you get into more of a defensive position? Do you shut down? Do you try and fix? Do you try and placate the other person? You know, so just, you know, for you both, but for all listeners, to really just take a moment, what happens for me in face of that? And then, like, perhaps even reflecting what happens in the relationship when that happens. When I shut down, then my partner XYZ, what happens there? You know, what's the relational pattern between us? When I shut down, my partner gets angry. And when they get angry, I get further withdrawn. One example. So even just taking a moment, maybe for you both and for listeners, to also reflect, think of maybe even an issue that happened recently that resulted in a conflict. And once you have that, trying to let go of the storyline of what happened, like, you know, whatever was going on in the story, and more just reflect with compassion, with understanding and compassion. What's the dynamic that happened between us? What's our cycle? What happened there? And given you both are my check-in people, maybe I can check in with you, and you've given me full permission for this, so I'm not
Full consent.
putting you on the spot.
The good thing no one's listening. It's a good thing no one's listening or watching this, Shari, so we have full privacy here.
Right, just us three. Do you have a sense of what the pattern is? Not so much the issue of what happened between you, the story of it, but what the pattern is.
I think I was thinking last night about the play. That the pattern is I'm more of a freeze or flight, and Galit's like, let's meet, let's talk, let's do it. And so I guess it would be a version of pursuer withdrawer kind of thing. Yeah. Where she wants to meet and talk about it. I'm like, oh, we'll talk about it later when you relax, when we come down, I'm not ready. And that's the cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens to you, Galit, when Assael goes, talk about it later?
I usually get very frustrated. Cause I'd rather kind of like meet, get it out the way, talk about it, see what's going on, try and understand. Like, I want to, like, let's get in there. And then this kind of like,
So you get
avoiding
frustrated
or-
or want to like get in there more and let it.
yeah. When I like, okay, what came up just now was like, how can we fix this? But I don't see myself really as a fixer, but I don't shy away from the conflict. Like I don't shy away from the heat.
So what happens for you, Assael, when Galit is like, well, no, I want to be in the heat together. I want to like
as a turtle, as a second generation turtle, I'm like, it's too hot. I can't. I interpret her as angry.
Yeah, you're not regulated. You're not.
Yeah, you
Right.
the one finger on her instead of the three on me. I feel defensive to her, and I feel belittled like a little child. She's gonna school me or mama me, and I just
so you don't get sticker in all of that, and you go more inside because you feel schooled or whatever. And then
yeah.
when you Galit when he's going further in the shell and feeling blaming and schooled and
I usually turn up the volume. My inclination is to turn up the volume.
so you're giving a beautiful example, and I'm sure you're not alone as a couple, but of like, the volume goes up rather than down, right? When you get more withdrawal. And the more your volume goes up, the more Assael withdraws even more. And it just kind of keeps going and escalating into that kind of difficult cycle.
Yeah.
So it's good to kind of recognize for you both, but also all couples who are listening, like all couples have a cycle. Let's just be really clear about that.
Yeah.
Relationships are the place where we can grow the most, and they're the place where most of our harm has happened growing up and otherwise. So it makes sense that this breeding ground of the relationship gives us a lot of potential opportunity to have refuge, but also to, pump up the volume of where some of those that triggers happen. Like Assael, you were saying, I feel like I'm getting schooled. I'm not, all of the stuff that can come up.
Yeah.
So, relationships are powerful, right? Like they really can provide a safe and supportive refuge from challenges, but they can also be a battleground in the middle of a bigger battleground that can make us feel more alone. So, a couple things little phrases I like to say with presence is we need to both regulate to relate. How do we regulate ourselves first before we get into those difficult kind of conversations, right? And maybe we can do a brief exercise. There's a few things I want to do today, but maybe we can do a brief exercise. And then I'll talk later how we also need to relate to regulate. As I was saying, we're these co-regulators. We have that potential.
Yes.
So I'd love to do just a brief practice, just a brief self-regulation kind of grounding presence practice. I'll do kind of a briefer version because there's a few different practices I want to do together just to get a sense of kind of a grounding practice. So I'm going to walk you and the listeners through, and if you'd like to participate when you're listening, great. If you want to just sit back and tune out, whatever you need, absolutely okay. Same with you both. Don't feel obligated. But just taking a moment to, and I appreciate you can close your eyes or look at the ground in front of you just for a moment to bring your attention inward. We're going to do a grounding visualization practice. I'm taking 2 or 3 breaths with long exhalations. Long exhalations really help to activate the ventral vagal system that helps us to regulate. And from, just if you are a visual person, then just inviting you to really visualize roots growing from underneath your feet, just like at the base of a tree. Roots growing into the ground, into the building below you and the earth below you. And just visualizing those roots growing and thickening into the earth, just like the roots of a tree. And roots don't just grow downwards, they grow outwards, they grow laterally. So visualize your roots growing laterally and interconnecting. It could be with your loved one, your partner, or it could be just with people or animals or nature, anything that helps you to feel loved and grounded. If there's a person even across the world that just helps you to feel grounded and loved, just visualizing your roots interconnecting with the roots of that other or those others. And if it feels right, you can even visualize your roots interconnecting with your partner underneath the earth, just feeling that place where you first came together, that sense of rootedness and groundedness. And it could include pets if there are, beings in your life that help you to feel grounded and rooted. And then maintaining that for a moment, that sense of rootedness and connection, rootedness in the earth. And you can move your visualization up your body and just noticing your torso and your legs, visualizing them as the trunk of the tree. Your arms like branches. Your head like the flower of the tree. And even though there's difficult storms that come that might knock off a branch or rip off leaves or move it shaking around in the wind, that there's a rootedness in the earth. There's a rootedness in your connections. And letting yourself feel that for a moment. And if there's any other images that really support you to feel grounded, like being a mountain in a mountain range, there's a sense of being in community and stability at the base, even when storms come. And taking another couple breaths, long exhalations. And perhaps just for a last reflection, if there's anything else in your life that helps you to feel grounded or rooted, just calling on that image or experience, remembering it. And then letting go of the intentionality of the practice, but maybe taking a quiet moment with yourself just for a moment, just to notice what was I aware of in that experience, in that brief grounding presence practice. What did I notice? What do I notice now in my body, including any challenges that came up? And then when you're ready, just opening your eyes more fully, returning to the virtual room, as well as your physical room. And just thank you for your practice. And maybe I can just check in with you both, or if anyone who's with us wants to share, just what did you notice in that practice and what do you notice in your body right now? People can feel free to share in the chat if they'd like to. No pressure.
I feel very sturdy, like a tree trunk, just like very. I don't even have the words, just like.
And I'm going to ask you a question before I ask Assael. How do you imagine if you were to enter into one of those difficult conversations with Assael from this place? How might it be different, if at all?
I think I would slow down. And I think that by being slower. It would be more of like a check-in of like, can we talk now? Is now a good time? Like, can we have this conversation? And a no wouldn't move me. It wouldn't rock me either way. It would just be very.
How would it be for you, Assael, if Galit took one of those conversations like that and more brought that inquiry from a steady place?
I mean, now I feel very Zenish.
Yeah.
Kind of
So then,
like the Matrix. I see it, see the numbers. So it feels to me like if now she would bring on the heat, I think I would be more like, be able to be more calm, holding on to myself more.
Right.
So,
yeah. So that's kind of that. I mean, this is one of many things to practice, but that's one of those regulate to relate, right? If we could take a few moments to pause and bring ourselves into just a bit more steadiness, a bit more calm, a bit more centeredness before approaching a partner with some of those difficult moments, that cycle might be different. It might go a little bit differently, possibly.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's not easy to do, right? Sometimes it's a practice. Sometimes it might mean I need to walk around the block and then I'll come back to this. I need to kind of go call my sister or family member and then we'll come back to this. It's like, what do you personally need to do a little bit of that regulation? I'm just going to get something to close my blinds because I realize we rarely have sunshine these days. And right now, you know that. So if there's anything else you want to share, I can move on from here. Or anything anyone wants to share in the chat, they can feel free to do that.
well, Shari, I want to know because this evening I had a screaming match with my 9-year-old. And I'm wondering, like, if I could just become this tree that I am now, so rooted, so kind of calm, so much, really like just slower, then the whole evening would have looked completely different. And I'm wondering, especially in light of, right, how the bi-directional of it, right? So she's like screaming, very upset, completely not regulated. I'm trying to keep it together, but how do I then access this feeling that I'm feeling now? Like my heart is like so slow, so calm. Whereas, earlier this evening, like her face was red, racing, like
between you and her,
right. And then the next thing I know, like I'm just losing it.
Right.
So how can I like access my tree trunk?
Yeah, I mean, I've a few things to say on it. So I appreciate the question. I mean, one is I like to say practice makes presence.
Yeah.
Right. The more you can find a practice, this is just one of many, but more you can find a practice that works for you. If you do that every day, then when you're wanting to do it for a few minutes before walking in the room to your daughter, then that experience is more accessible because we know from neuroscience and neuroplasticity that the more we experience something, it makes an imprint on the brain that then allows us to access it more. So look at in a few minutes, you came to that place. If you did this every day and then, or some other form of practice, and then, even with your daughter screaming at you, be able to say, I just need to go to the bathroom for a minute. I'll be back, or walk away or find a space where you come into practice that regulate to relate, and then come back to it. If you're doing it frequently, it'll become more possible. If you're doing it just in the middle of intense conflicts, no, it's much harder.
Right.
It's much harder. So it's doing it in the good moments like now, and then being able to access it more through that repetition. But, you're also leading into something else I want to talk about, which is kind of the challenges to coming into this state and in relationship particularly. And, for decades, as Assael was pointing out before, I've been studying, researching, training and presence. But the last 10 years, I've been incorporating more self-compassion into my practice, and I've become a trained teacher. And it's really struck me how it is so essential. It is so helpful to work with some of the challenges to presence in relationship. and to being present. And so self-compassion, there's many different kind of versions of self-compassion, but one of the trainings that I have is mindful self-compassion by Kristen Neff and Chris Germer. And I teach in the mindful self-compassion program I teach online. And there's 3 components that they talk about. One is mindfulness. I need to be aware of my experience in my body before I can, be able to work with it. So being aware of suffering, of pain, of difficulty, of the tension and fire that's coming up in you, with respect to your daughter. So mindfulness. The second component is common humanity, that you're not alone, right? Every mother that has gone through having a young kid or teenage, how old is your daughter?
9.
9, a 9-year-old has a
15.
Going on 16 has had these moments, right? This is so natural, normal. I think sometimes when we go through challenges, like, what's wrong with me? I'm like, well, every other mother's great. I'm the only one, or whatever kind of experience. But that sense of common humanity, that we are human and we suffer and we do things incorrectly, or I don't even want to call it that. We do things messy because we're human. And that sense of feeling more common humanity. And then the third component, self-kindness, that bringing kindness to some of the pain and suffering, and that through bringing these 3 into our challenges, we can start to bring a little bit more compassion, so we don't have another layer. There's the layer of, oh my God, I'm reacting. And then there's the layer of, what's wrong with me that I'm reacting? I'm a bad partner. I'm a bad mother. I can't do this. And then the layers just kind of grow.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, self-compassion allows us to be with difficult moments with more kindness and care, not to fix it, not to fix something that's going on, but to be with it because we are suffering, because you are suffering in that moment that you're going through that kind of interaction, either with Assael or with your daughter or otherwise, right? So it's a resource that can really support returning to presence, working with the challenge of returning to presence in relationship. So, if you're willing, I'd love to do just a brief self-compassion break, just to get a sense of kind of what a self-compassion practice might look like. So I'm going to invite you back into practice and just come back to breath for a moment, taking a few breaths. And call upon a particular challenging moment that's happened in relationship recently. Could be with your partner or your child, or someone else, a friend or loved one, family member, client. And you might have a lot of contenders. So just finding, one of those challenging moments. If you can find a level 5 out of 10, that's probably better than a 10 out of 10. Just for the sake of working with this practice. And then taking a moment just to reflect on what happened in that conflict, in that difficulty. And then letting go of the story of what happened in the conflict and getting a sense of where you're feeling it in your body. Tension in chest or, wherever it might be. And just bringing a mindful awareness without judgment. There's a sharpness in my chest or a weight on my back or a burning in my gut. Bringing a non-judgmental, mindful awareness to that experience in the body. And if you're practicing with us, if it becomes intense at any time, you can stop, you can take a break, you can step back. And then bringing an awareness of common humanity, like, I'm not the only couple that's dealt with this challenge. I'm not the only human being. I'm not the only parent. This is part of being human. As humans, we suffer. And just feeling the common humanity of everyone else who's going through challenges in this conflict in wartime. You're not alone. Feeling that interconnection, it's just as being another human being who suffers. And then inviting that third component of self-kindness, which is just bringing some kindness to the pain. Like maybe you want to put a hand on it if that feels right on your body, a soothing touch. Or some kind words like, hey, I want to understand you. I'm here for you. This is really difficult. You're not alone. Just like you would talk to a dear friend, just bringing that kindness to the suffering and the pain inside. Then breathe in. And if it feels right, you can take this last step, which is just to check in with the pain inside. What do I need? What does it need? And just listening, whatever comes up. If nothing comes up, that's okay. Just being open to whatever's there without judgment, with compassion. And then letting go of that practice and just taking a quiet moment with yourself, just to notice what came up, what this was like. Sometimes when we bring self-compassion, some really difficult feelings can arise. So maybe even taking a moment to think about what might I need even now or after this call. Maybe a walk or a cup of tea or lie down. And then when you're ready, just inviting your awareness back, just slowly, gently to the virtual room. So what I'd like to do, even before you share with me what came up, well, actually, no, I'm going to pause there for a minute. Maybe you want to share anything that you'd like to share about that practice first.
I think I'm noticing I just want to listen to you, Shari. I just feel like I just want to be held. And I think the sentence that you said, I was thinking about a fight I had with my son this evening. And that was just a sentence when you said you're not alone. I think for me, that's just, there's a sense of just being alone, being so alone in this country right now, in the world, not being understood.
Yeah.
And as I was trying to disconnect the story, it was just me feeling alone and sad and scared and lashing out and him, dumping it on him. That it made me sad. I guess when you step out of numbness, as you said, you feel it.
A lot of feeling there.
Yeah.
And were you able to bring any kind of soothing touch to some of that sadness or common humanity that other people are feeling this way, or mindful awareness? Did any of that?
It was hard because shame and guilt are my native tongue.
Right.
That's the Romanelli language. So I guess I was imagining other homes in Israel right now. Also, parents yelling at kids, dumping their shit on their kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're certainly not alone with that. If there are a lot of people on the call, and even those who are here now wanted to raise their virtual hand if they've ever yelled at their kid in the middle of all these challenges or difficulties, my guess is a lot of hands will go up. You know, and one of the things I want to say before you, hearing from you, Galit, is sometimes when it's like you said, the unnumb and then the difficulties come up, you know, this is self-compassion in this kind of way is kind of a practice, but sometimes it's really important just to have behavioral self-compassion. like I need a cup of tea and just sit for a second. I need to go for a walk, take a bath. What can you do? Go in the garden. Like what's behaviorally helpful sometimes when we feel very vulnerable feelings?
I guess for me, I want to feel vulnerable. Exactly. Like for me, to choose to feel is an act. It's a choice. Like because my default is to not feel anything, and I think
Yeah.
like I was cherishing the moment as you were walking me through the practice, and just to feel that, even though it was like that's feeling alive for me. I want to feel.
Yeah. I'm curious, Galit, what happens when he says, I want to feel vulnerable? I notice you turn towards him. What happens for you when Assael feels a little more vulnerable or shares that or shows that?
I think I'm working on kind of making space and even, I hope, inviting more of that. I know that sometimes it's hard for me when you share things that make you anxious. I think that that's kind of when I sometimes don't make the space because I'm worried that, it'll just envelop us all. But
Yeah.
But I'd rather feel than not feel.
Yeah, maybe what you're saying is connecting to before is just sometimes when our partners feel a lot, we can get either overwhelmed and then go into fix it mode or something.
Right.
And how do we step back and take care of ourselves and regulate within ourselves so that we can take care of what's coming up so that we can make those spaces. Like you're important in that equation.
Yeah.
And do you want to say anything about what the practice was like for you, Galit?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I also went kind of with what you said about, the common humanity in other homes. And I also kind of had like this visual of all these homes in Israel. And I think that what that brought up for me was that we're trying so hard to kind of harness some sense of normalcy for the kids, some sense of structure, some sense of everyday. And I think that sometimes I guess this is kind of where the self-compassion comes in, is that like we spend a lot of emotional energy blocking out a lot of the stressors. And yeah, I guess sometimes it's just really hard and I snapped tonight. It was just, it was too much.
Yeah. Understandably. And maybe you're recognizing how much energy goes into blocking those stressors out. But there's a lot in here in doing that.
Yeah.
And how do you then make space as a couple to talk about how hard that is, that we are blocking out all these stressors for our kids, yet we're holding a lot and really making space to listen to the other person about what that's like for you guys as individuals and couple separate from your kids, just as beings in the world. Like I'm wondering even now what it's like, Assael, is Galit sharing that.
I feel it's hard for me to feel her and feel myself at the same time. And I feel like it's just to be open right now, because I suddenly realized like it's not just the kids. We're holding our clients. We're holding not hundreds of couples, and being hopeful and giving joy and play and hope, and
It's a lot.
it's a lot.
Would you be willing, I'll do a really abbreviated for a few minutes of a practice that involves holding ourselves while holding the other. It's actually a practice called giving and receiving compassion, but it is also called holding ourselves while holding the other. It's got a lot of different names. Okay. So just going back in for a moment, just taking a few long exhalations. And again, viewers can participate or not, whatever they want. And just for a moment, just feeling the rhythm of your breath, just the natural flow of inhale and exhale. There's a rhythm. The breath comes in, the breath goes out. Just like the ocean goes in, the tide goes out. Feeling that rhythm just for a moment. And then I invite you for a moment just to focus on the inhalation. Let the exhalation be there in the background, but just focus on the sensation of inhalation. And as you breathe in, just feeling the nourishment of the inhalation. Perhaps even breathing in something that you need for yourself, something good for yourself, like breathing in compassion or peace or care or love. Just breathing in for yourself for a few moments. And you can let that word just ride on your inhalation or however it is for you. Breathing in for you. And then just letting your focus turn a little bit to your exhalation for a moment. Just letting inhalation be there in the background, but just being aware of the sensation of exhalation and the release that can happen with exhalation, the letting go in your body. And then bringing the image of your partner and some of the challenges they go through, or you might want to bring the image of someone else that's struggling into your mind's eye. And breathing out for them. Breathing out something they might need, something good for them, like compassion or kindness or care. Something they need. With each exhalation, breathing out for them. And now being aware of both inhalation and exhalation at the same time. Breathing in for yourself and out for the other. Breathing in compassion for yourself. Breathing out compassion or something good for the other. In for me, out for you. One for me, one for you. And if at any time you feel like you need a little bit more, then just lingering on the inhalation for a little bit. Or if the other needs a little bit more, then lingering on the exhalation for a little bit. In for me, out for you. One for me, one for you. And just continuing just for another moment with that practice. If you're distracted or your mind goes off, you get tired, that's okay. Just notice that and invite your awareness back to the rhythm of breathing. Or maybe a touch of your hand on your body if that's helpful. In for me, out for you. One for me, one for you. And letting go of the intentionality of that practice, but just taking a quiet moment with yourself, just to notice what the practice was like for you, what was challenging, what was helpful, what was neutral. This is a practice that can be powerful too when you're in the middle of a disagreement or conflict with a partner and you're so disconnected. It's just breathing in for myself, out for the other until I feel reconnected. It's also helpful for therapists when they feel a lack of presence or shut down to just do this brief in for me, out for you internally until I feel reconnected. So when you're ready, just inviting yourself back to the virtual room. Opening your eyes in your own pace, in your own way. And then before we move to Q&A, if there's anything you both want to share about that practice or what it was like for you, would love to hear that. Maybe even telling the other what it was like.
Getting more very calming, very like held.
What were you giving the other?
I was taking in from me.
That's what she needed.
Well, for me.
Did you change in? What word came up for you?
Just more air.
Right. Listen to that Assael. If it's setting you off, then breathe in and out compassion. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. Okay, good. What was it like for you, Assael?
You bring in what happened to your glider with our daughter really made me think about kids. I think we're very mindful that we work a lot here and we're doing these relational talks and we're crying and working. And I realized that I'm not in tune with my kids. They're the last one on the list after Galit and my clients and the articles and the webinars and, and for me, I guess the two things that were coming up was, for me, what I need is hope that something good is going to happen in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's just going to say it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what you were saying, you're not alone. And the second part of that sentence is, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think then I was thinking about my kids and the word attention. You know what? I'm going to use your word, presence. And it was interesting that I had that wave of guilt and shame, right? The Romanelli special came over, and then I was trying to do self-compassion and say, okay, thank you for that sign. Okay, something that was lacking. And it's wonderful that I'm noticing this now.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Going beyond the shame and guilt into, great, I'm glad I noticed that this is something they could benefit from, or me, that I can give them.
Yeah, very powerful. I mean, it sounds both like there was a moment where you could offer yourself, it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So right now, yeah, I'm looking for someone to say that, and no one is saying that. And maybe that is something that I need to choose to believe in.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Self-compassion is partly about how we reparent ourselves, right? And to be able to bring some of that, what we need that we're still looking outside for, all those unmet needs, and to be able to bring that here when we need it. And this other part you're saying about your kids, that you move past just the guilt and shame that normally comes up and then it's game over.
Right.
To instead, okay, that's there, bringing kindness to it, and then just saying, oh, I want to be more connected. I want to have a little more time there. As opposed to I'm a bad person because I don't, which is just a stopper. It's not actually going to happen anyways from that frame.
And that's where I stopped. And then I don't want to feel that, so I dissociate from that. Yeah.
Yeah, understandably. So I think, these are complex, difficult practices that we're doing in a short time. I want to really name that and appreciate that. But there are ways that we can kind of bring some both kindness to ourselves amidst all of this stress and trauma, but also with our partners and our loved ones, because they're the refuge. And, I know for many people, there's a lot of loss when I say that. Some people don't have that. They've been killed in the war or disappeared or still don't know where they are. And we need to be able to bring some kindness to all that intense grief and unknown, because it doesn't get more brutal than this. So I do want to make some space for Q&A if there is any. There doesn't have to be, but I know you had asked me for that, so I want to make sure
So if anybody has any questions now, and wow, how are you, Galit?
I'm enjoying this feeling of just low. And I feel like there's like a heated blanket on my heart.
Is there a way you want to kind of nurture that or state with that even after we hang up for a bit, something you need that would help that?
I think it's just kind of like, I feel like being here and sitting here, not getting up too quickly, like to the next thing, but just like sitting.
Savoring it a little bit. Yeah. There's some work, Rick Hansen, who does positive neuroplasticity, and he talks about negativity is like Velcro and positivity is Teflon. It goes very quickly, so we need to slow it down and savor it so that it comes into every cell of our body when we do have those brief moments.
Yeah.
I think for me, I just notice how you're speaking slow, and I'm really touched by that. Not alone. There was a moment in the first exercise with the tree when you said, imagine your roots intertwining. And there's these moments when we're lying in bed and we use a text that Galit's feet will suddenly kind of intertwine with my foot. He'll be sleeping, but suddenly there'll be like a little root coming out, a moment of connection.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm really taking, and not being alone.
Yeah.
I think you really named it for me. It's this loneliness. And even in my own hallway, even in my own bed, you're like, you go to your core, till there's just nothing.
Yeah. And my guess is you're not alone in that feeling. And I just had an image, in this small country that's at the center of the world's attention. And there's all these people feeling alone. And yet they're suffering also. They're in it together. We're all in it together. But you particularly. And if anyone can walk away with that message that you're sharing of, not of the validation of feeling alone, but that we're not alone, especially in the suffering of this time.
Also realizing that the refuge you're giving us, right? I'm thinking about, the
ripple effect.
The ripple effect.
Pay it forward.
Yeah, like I guess this is what we get others, and now it's so nice to feel it from you.
Yeah.
And I see Eva saying thank you for your contribution to our struggle.
It's good to see you, Eve. Thank you. I haven't connected with you through this, and I'm glad to see you and just thinking about you and Ben a lot.
How nice to see you.
Yeah. If you want to share something, you can share something if you want. It's recorded though, so just be mindful.
No, I just know Shari for years, and I partly came on just to see her and hear her voice. So
I know she does such good work and very comforting practices. So I think it's great, and I hope a lot of people will hear the recording as well.
I'm so glad you were here, and I think about you a lot, actually. And I'm sorry I haven't reached out because I really think about you so much.
Thank you for being here for us here.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for organizing these talks.
Yeah. It's a gift. You're really giving a gift.
Really. So generous. Both of you, all of you.
Just realizing as you're speaking, thank you, Eve, and also seeing that you two have a connection. Suddenly I'm feeling this humanity, and I think it's just the slowing down, really letting it all land, letting just connecting for a second.
It's a double-edged sword because we need to slow down, but slowing down means we're going to feel what is here. So then we need the tools and the support to feel what's here. Whether it be like the behavioral self-compassion, the interconnection, but it is the slowing down. And I think we keep busy to get away from some of this, but it doesn't go away. The only thing that actually helps it to go away is to actually let yourself feel it and to not do it alone.
The timekeeper, I feel the responsibility to slowly wrap things up. So let's do a round, our closing round. And then Shari, mostly for the recording, I'm sure people want to hear how to work with you more, but let's start with the closing round. What are you taking from today, Galit? A word, phrase?
Well, first of all, Shari, thank you so much for helping us slow down, because I think we've been, I don't think I even realized how much and fast you've been trying to kind of keep up and do, and I think that also, like you really held space for us, which I don't think we get often. We don't usually get somebody holding the space for us. So thank you so much for that. And I'm really just taking this embodied feeling of like slow, calm, like no need to, I don't even need to know what's going to happen next. I can just sit in my body. I can just be here now. And I really want to take that kind of the practice of, I'm calling it like I felt like a tree, like I felt like in the bark and in the, the tree trunk. And I really want to take that. I think especially with our kids, I think you're right. I think our kids have gotten the least amount of attention. And I don't know, there's something about kind of being that tree trunk as for them, of like being that sturdy, safe, warm, rooted, grounded place. So I'm really taking the embodied feeling of that. Thank you.
Well, you hold space, both of you, for so many others. It's an honor to have a few moments to hold space for you. Because that not only permeates to so many others, but to your kids and to yourselves. Thank you.
You. Shari, do you want to say something? Then I'll say something and we'll wrap up.
Just a deep thank you for inviting me in. You know, I live and think and feel about what's going on in Israel all the time. And to have a moment where I can offer something in this way is a real blessing. So very appreciative.
You know, as you were talking, I see also Shani saying thank you so much from London. And I was just thinking about
Thank you, Shani.
thinking about the like how long I've known you. Like we don't know each other. It's the first like I've been to your workshop and I listened to your recordings and I've read your book and it was like I had this deep gratitude just for meeting you and you being so generous.
We've known each other a long time. And I'm grateful for all the improv you've brought to presence. I think it's a huge, huge element that I've leaned on. And it's a gift to have this kind of time together.
And for me, it's not easy to leave. And I really want to thank you for stepping up and being there. And
Well,
I hope you feel like meaningful, like you have spent your life to do this work. And I'm very grateful that you get to sit next to your mastery and just be there with you like a wise sage matriarch. Because I don't know. I just feel very grateful.
Well, you're reconnecting me to the meaning of this work because sometimes I can lose sight. So I appreciate that. And it's been incredibly meaningful to spend this time together. And I really hope that it's not the last.
So for those of us,
Yeah.
Shari, I know I'm going to speak for others. For those of us who want more, how do people reach you? How do they work with you? How do they sit by your feet and just...
Well, they first sit by my feet, but they can sit by my side. You know, I think the best thing is just to look me up on I'm not a big self-promoter, or at least don't want to take that moment here, even though I appreciate what you're sharing here as I go on low battery. So 1 minute. But, you know, people can look on my website, sharigeller.ca. Maybe you can share that resource. You know, the working with me is difficult because as a therapist, you know, it's in Ontario, in Canada, but from a self-compassion, you know, I've been thinking about how can I offer some more self-compassion groups or even a half day or something through the suffering of what's happening in Israel. So maybe there is some seeds that are planted in this moment.
Yeah.
How we can look together and how we can generate that.
Yeah, I organize that. I think a lot of people.
Yeah.
For anyone listening to us live or the recording, we wish you presence and self-compassion. And we're here to help if anybody needs. And just enjoy this moment of humanity. And Shari, thank you so, so, so much.
Thank you so much.
On behalf
Thank
of our
you.
children.
Yeah, thank you guys, all of you.
All right. Take care.
Well,
Good night. Stay safe, everyone.
yes, safe and be well.